5. Educational reforms, 1863 to 1874. Alexander II introduced reforms to the education system to modernize it and make it more accessible to the population. Primary education was expanded and made compulsory for a time, especially for the children of the peasantry. Secondary and higher education was also reformed, with the creation of more universities and an increase in the number of students. However, this also led to the rise of a more educated middle class, many of whom became critical of the autocratic system. The education reforms had the unintended consequence of giving rise to radical movements, as many young intellectuals, inspired by liberal ideas, began to demand more political freedom and social change. 6. Censorship and press reforms, 1865. Alexander II relaxed censorship laws to some extent. In 1865, he passed a law that allowed more freedom of the press, which led to a more vibrant public debate on politics, culture, and society. Newspapers and journals could now publish more freely, and many intellectuals and political activists took advantage of this newfound liberty to push for reforms and criticize the government. However, the relaxation of censorship also led to the publication of radical and revolutionary ideas, which would later fuel revolutionary movements against the Tsarist regime. 7. Economic reforms and industrialization. Although Alexander II did not directly oversee large-scale economic reforms, his policies set the stage for Russia's industrialization, which took off toward the end of his reign. Infrastructure. The construction of railways expanded dramatically under Alexander II's rule. The most notable was the Trans-Siberian Railway, which connected European Russia with Siberia, aiding the movement of goods and people. Industrialization. While much of the industrial progress occurred after Alexander II's death, his reforms, such as the abolition of serfdom, played a role in creating a more mobile workforce and fostering economic growth in cities. 8. The repression of radical movements. While Alexander II's reign was characterized by reforms, it also saw the rise of revolutionary movements that sought to overthrow the Tsarist system. Populists, Narodniks, inspired by the ideals of socialism, tried to reach the peasantry and promote the idea of revolution. They believed that Russia's salvation lay in the peasantry, and many sought to encourage peasants to rise up against the aristocracy. In response, Alexander II's government began cracking down on these movements, using police surveillance, arrests, and trials. In 1881, after numerous assassination attempts, he was finally assassinated by the People's Will, a radical revolutionary group. Conclusion. Alexander II's reforms, while ambitious, were limited by the conservative nature of Russian society and the resistance of the aristocracy and the church. Despite his efforts to modernize Russia, his reforms were often incomplete or failed to produce the desired effects. The emancipation of the serfs, in particular, did not achieve its full potential, and many peasants remained dissatisfied. By the end of his reign, Alexander II faced growing opposition from both conservatives who feared the reforms and radicals who wanted more sweeping changes. His assassination in 1881 marked the end of his reformist era and the beginning of a more reactionary period under his son, Alexander III. Thus, while Alexander II made significant strides in modernizing Russia, his reforms were both a source of progress and a catalyst for further unrest, which ultimately contributed to the revolutionary movements of the late 19th and early 20th centuries.